In Python, strings can be multiplied by numbers. You can't use the plus sign between a string and a number in Python. You can use the plus sign to add two numbers or concatenate two strings, but it doesn't work between strings and numbers. Interestingly, you can multiply a string by a number. You can think of this as self-concatenation. We're concatenating this string to itself a specific number of times. You can only self-concatenate a string using integers. It wouldn't really make sense for strings to be multiplied a non-integer number of times. And keep in mind that negative numbers do work for self-concatenation. They'll just always give an empty string, which is also what happens when you multiply a string by 0. Any object that supports concatenation probably also supports self-concatenation. So other sequences, like lists, tuples, and byte strings, can also be self-concatenated. This is kind of an interesting feature, but why does it exist? Does it actually have a use? I've occasionally used self-concatenation to create a list of a specific size with specific default values. For example, we might use self-concatenation to make a list representing the 12 months in a year to count how many times something occurs in that list, and we'd like to default all the counts to 0. But more often, I've used this feature to create a string of the same character repeating a specific number of times. For example, I may want to print 80 hyphen characters between sections of output in a program. Just as with creating a new data structure or assigning a variable in Python, self-concatenation doesn't copy anything. Assigning a variable to a value in Python doesn't copy that value. Variables in Python are like pointers, so changing the list that B points to also changes the list that A points to. This happens because these two variables point to the same object. That's what an assignment does in Python. Just as assigning a variable to a value doesn't copy that value, using self-concatenation with a list or tuple of items won't copy those items. So if we tried to multiply a list containing a list by 3 to self-concatenate it 3 times, we'll end up with a list containing the same 3 items. That is, index 0 is the same exact object as index 1, meaning if we mutate one of these inner lists, we'll change all of the inner lists. This happens because they're all the same list. Like most operations, self-concatenation doesn't make copies. In practice, that means self-concatenation is usually only used with sequences that contain immutable items, not sequences that contain mutable items. Self-concatenation is useful for making strings that contain the same character or the same sequence of characters a specific number of times. It's also useful for pre-filling lists with a specific number of default values within them. But self-concatenation doesn't copy anything, so don't try to use it to make lists of mutable values like lists of lists.